Well, hello there and welcome to the JOANN Stitch-Along for the spring of 2023. I am your knitting instructor, Marley Bird, and in this video I will show you how to make this really great mosaic check ruana. In this video, we will learn all about the stitch pattern because that is the most important part of this entire piece. Without knowing that, you really can't make any of it. So we will spend the majority of this video learning the stitch pattern itself, and then you will be left to do your homework, which is finishing the entire back of the ruana. Right now, I want you to make sure you have your supplies on hand as well as that pattern. You can find the pattern in the link in the video description box right down there below, and the full list of supplies is included in it. Once you have your supplies and your pattern, join me back here and we will jump in with our first little swatch. Okay, I have all the supplies I need, including a very long needle because all of the stitches for the back of my ruana are going to fit on the length of my needle. Now, for the demonstration, I am going to switch up my colors a little bit because I'm just going to go on a limb here and assume that the black yarn is going to be very difficult for you to see. Because of that, I am not going to use the black yarn for my demonstration. I will be using the variegated color and the sort of creamy white color. What is this color called? Off-white. Well, I'm going to be using these two colors for my demo. You want to make sure you are following along with the colors you chose for each portion of your ruana. If you changed up the colors, which is totally fine, what I would do is make a little note in your pattern. Just jot down, hey, my color 1 is off-white. My color 2 is gray, or whatever it might be. That way you don't ever lose track and you don't forget what color is what if you happen to come back to your project after a couple days off. This is the very back of the ruana at the very bottom, and you'll notice down here we start with colors A and B, which are the black and the white. So because I am switching up my color A and my color B, I am going to treat the variegated as my color B, and I'm going to treat my white as my color A. All right, so just so that you know how that works. Now, when we do mosaic stitches, they are a great way of adding color work to a project without having to hold two colors at the same time. Each row is worked with one color, okay? So we will have our yarn left over on the side here, and we are not going to cut it each time. We will leave it attached, and then we are going to float up our color as we go along. That makes it really easy for the maintenance of the finishing, right? We won't have a whole lot of tails to work. The big thing that happens here in order to get these color sequences is we are going to slip colors as we come to them as indicated in the pattern. And the color we slip will be the color from the previous row. So, rule of thumb, if you're working, let's just say black and white. If you're working with your black yarn, the color you will be slipping will be your white yarn. If you're working with your white yarn, the color you'll be slipping is your black yarn. Okay, it's a pretty easy rule of thumb to kind of think through if you're like unsure, like, oh, should I slip this color? Should I slip that color? It's always going to be the opposite color than the one you're using. As I said, the color you're not using will be waiting down here for you, which means every single time you use a color, you will go down and back. So you will use one color for 2 rows before it's time to switch, okay? So you'll go down and back, switch colors, down and back, switch colors. All right, let's go ahead, get our yarn, grab your needles, and let's cast on some stitches and work up a swatch to begin with. You can use this as your gauge swatch, which is a really handy thing to have, and it will give you a chance to test out these stitches without committing to a huge portion of the project first. Let's begin with a swatch with 29 stitches. And as I mentioned, I will be using my off-white color as my color A. And I am going to use a long tail cast on. It is my preferred cast on, especially for items like this. So I am grabbing myself a nice long tail to have 29 stitches. And then I am going to cast those on. So let's start off with our slip knot and place it directly onto the needle. I will walk you through the long tail cast on. Should you choose to use a different cast on, that's absolutely okay. It's up to you. I've put the slip knot on my needle and I've grabbed my working yarn is right here. It's over my finger. My tail yarn is going to be over my thumb. All right, so I'm just like this, and I've created a slingshot. Now I'm going to start down here at the bottom of my thumb, and I'm going to go up my thumb, swivel around to the tip of my finger, go down my finger. You have this little window that's created right here by that loop on your thumb. You're going to bring this yarn here from your finger through this loop. So if I'm going to put my finger right here just to show you where it's going right through that loop. Okay, there's that string, and I let my yarn fall off my thumb, give it a tug, and boom, I have 2 stitches on my needle. You readjust, and you do it again. So that counts as 1, 2, up the thumb, down the finger, through the window. There's 3, up the thumb, down the finger, through the window. There's 4, up the thumb, down the finger, through the window. There's 5, up the thumb, down the finger, through the window. There's 6. Now, I am going to show you another way to do the long tail cast on where you're actually using both hands. And sometimes there are people who find this one easier, okay? So I am going to start this on my thumb. So this is my tail. I'm grabbing my yarn and I'm just going to scoop my thumb right around, okay? So it's just like this. I'm going to go up my thumb. I'm going to hold my needle here. Grab my working yarn, this is the yarn that's attached to the ball of yarn, and wrap it around my needle just like if I were knitting. Now I'm going to pull my needle through that loop that's on my thumb and off. All right, we literally just did the exact same thing. It's just my yarn happens to be like, it's not on this finger, it's over here. So up my thumb, around my needle, out of the loop on my thumb and off. Up my thumb, around my needle, out the loop on my thumb, and off. Up my thumb, around my needle, out the loop on my thumb, and off. If that's easier for you to do, please go ahead and do it. It's the exact same thing as having everything in one hand. You choose which one's easier for you or go a completely different route. Just go ahead and get on those 29 stitches so we can work up this gauge swatch. Great, now we have 29 stitches. It's time for us to add a little bit of fabric down here so that we can have something substantial on there before we jump into our mosaic. So I will go into the stitch just as normal and knit. So I want you to do the same thing. Let's go ahead and get 3 rows knit. We have our 29 stitches, we have several rows of knitting done. Now it's time to jump into our stitch pattern for our swatch. It is at this time we are going to drop our color A and we will be grabbing our color B, and we work the first 2 rows with our color B. Now something to note here is as you are looking at your fabric right here, this is the right side of your fabric. So if you have a stitch marker handy, grab it and just put it right through the fabric on this side. Just put it there. What that's going to do, it's a big old sign to you to be like, hey, when you're on this side of the fabric, we want to make sure that when you're slipping those stitches for the mosaic, you will slip them with your yarn in back, because we don't want those slip stitch floats to show on the right side, right? We want them on the wrong side. So this just is really handy, especially as you're starting your project. As you get going, it's going to be very obvious. But when you're beginning, you can get a little bit disoriented. So I'm just putting a marker right there to indicate this is the right side of my fabric. And when I'm on the right side, I want to make sure my floats are in back, okay? I want them on the wrong side. You never want your floats on the right side, all right? Now, we're going to grab our other color, leave yourself a nice long tail. Just let the first color, your color A, just let it hang out there. You're not going to do anything else with it. And we're going to jump into our stitch pattern. Now, mind you, we only have 29 stitches, okay? So we're not going to follow along row 1 for the entire number of stitches that is written in the pattern. We're just doing it for what we have on our little swatch here. So we begin with a knit 1. And then we're going to slip 1 with yarn and back. So when we slip 1, we want to go into the stitch purlwise. All right, so you're going to put your needle into your stitch as if to purl. Our yarn is in back of our work, and you just slip it off. It's that easy, you guys. And then we knit one, slip one purlwise with yarn and back. We're going to do this 5 times, all right? So knit one, slip one purlwise, knit one, slip one purlwise, knit one, slip one purlwise. Let's count. Let's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've done that 5 times. Now I'm supposed to knit 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now it says repeat from star to the last 11 stitches. Now, because of our swatch, we're already to our 11 stitches. So we're going to go directly to that portion of the pattern. So we will knit one, slip one with yarn and back, 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 and knit one. Okay? You can see exactly where the slip ones were because they're the ones that are white. Remember, you never slip the same color as the yarn you are using. We will turn our work. We go to row 2, and row 2, we will knit one, slip one purlwise with yarn in front. All right, so bring our yarn forward, slip one purlwise, and our yarn is forward. Now we have to bring our yarn back between our needles, back to the back, and knit one. Between our needles to the front, slip one purlwise. Between our needles to the back, knit one. To the front, slip one purlwise. To the back, knit one. To the front, slip one purlwise. To the back, knit one. To the front, slip one purlwise, to the back, knit one. I've hit the part in my pattern where I am to all of those stitches that I had knit. So let's take a look. Are we supposed to knit or purl? Ooh, we're supposed to purl these stitches. So I'm going to keep my yarn in the front and I'm going to purl 9 stitches. So let's go ahead and get those 9 stitches purled here. And then I'm coming up to where I have a white stitch. So I know that that is a differentiation or a different part of the pattern, right? Okay, because I don't want to work into the stitches that I slipped. Now I'm going to bring my yarn forward, slip one purlwise, bring my yarn between the needles, and knit one. You guys get the hang of this, right? Slip one, and then I'll knit that last one. All right. Don't worry if that gets a little loose. It's all right. So I'm going to turn my work. That's the end of my row 2. Now the instructions say that they want you to switch colors here at the end, and they want you to keep it consistent throughout. So they want your old yarn in back, and they want you to bring your new yarn in front of it. So meaning they don't want it so that way, like if this green here were up here and you're pulling the white from back there so it looks like that, they don't want that. The designer wants you to pull it this way so that yarn's in back and the white's going to come in front of it. So we are going to completely ignore the green now, or whatever color you're using. I'm going to ignore my color B and I'm going to use my color A. Now for me, guys, I'm going to be honest, I find it easier to switch the position of my yarns, so I'm going to do that. Maybe that's because I'm a continental knitter, I'm not real sure, but I find it easier if I change their positions, the yarn is out of the way for me. So I'm going to put that out of the way, bring my color A back into work, and here we are, okay? All right, so I'm back to my color A, and I'm gonna continue on to row 3. Row 3, it says with color A, I knit 10 stitches. So that's easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now we are to our repeat. Slip one with yarn and back, yarns and back, slip one, and then knit one. So it says to do that 4 times. Slip one, knit one, slip one, knit one, slip one, knit one. I think that was 4 times. So slip knit, slip knit, slip knit. Yep, there's 4 times. Now I carry on and I will slip one with yarn in back and knit 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You would repeat all of those to the last stitch, which we already are there, so we will knit 1. Okay? Turn our work. Our other color isn't down there waiting for us, so we know that's a clue. We're still on this color. We're on row 4. We will knit 1. Purl 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is our repeat. Slip one with yarn in front. This is my other color, so I'm slipping one with yarn in front. Bring my yarn between my needles and knit 1. I will do this 4 times. Slip one with yarn in front, knit 1, slip one with yarn in front, knit 1, slip one with yarn in front, knit 1. Now I slip one with yarn in front and purl 9. So purl 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I would repeat all of that for the end of my row if I was on my Ruana till I get to the last stitch. On my last stitch, I knit it. Turn my work. It's at this point, because I've done 2 rows with my color A, right? I'm going to switch back to my color B. So I drop my color A, pick up my color B, and then carry on with my color B. Doesn't that look cool so far? It's interesting how great your color work can look given that we're just using one color each time, but those slip stitches really give a really cool look to the fabric, okay? Now, believe it or not, you have just learned everything you need to know for this project as far as it comes to the stitch pattern. You know how to knit, you know how to purl, you know how to slip one purlwise with yarn in front, slip one purlwise with yarn in back. That's all you need to know for the entire back of this Ruana. The only thing that changes is your color placement and the blocks, all right? So to better describe that, I'm gonna bring in the sample and let's talk through what you will be doing, all right? You are looking at a portion of the back of the Ruana. This is the bottom, this is the edge, and then we are working up this way. If we are to take our swatch and put it next to this, you're essentially looking at this little bit, okay? There's one extra stitch over here because we didn't continue down the whole way, but this is essentially what you were looking at. As we continue on our swatch, what you will notice is on this block, has this one here looks like it's black stripes. Over here, you're gonna look like it's white stripes. As this one looks like it's white stripes, because we switched up our colors, you're gonna look like you have these variegated stripes. And then over here, you're gonna have white stripes again. This is going to continue on as you repeat these 4 rows a total of 3 times more, okay? So 3 times more is going to give you this big check section. Then what's going to happen is you work a row of just knit stitches without any slips, and then you work a row of purl stitches without any slips, okay? So that's 17 and 18. When you get to rows 19 and 36, we essentially flip the script, okay? You can see instead of stacking the black on, black on the black and a white on a white and so on and so forth, we're checkerboarding it. So we switch up which colors are getting slipped as we work through rows 19 through 36. And then you do those 2 rows of stockinette, essentially. It's a knit row and a purl row right here, okay? And then we flip the script again. And then we have the stockinette again, and then we flip the script again. Only this one up here, we completely change the color. We drop the white and go back to the variegated, okay? Can you see how this works up? So what you've learned here is literally it's everything you need to know. You know how to create this. It's simply a matter of putting the color where it's supposed to be as indicated in the pattern, okay? It's pretty easy stuff. That's not so scary, right? Mosaic stitches are meant to be fun and exciting, and I think that you will find that. Here's what I want you to do. If you will carry on with your swatch, get yourself at least through 2 of the checks on there. So that way you can see how those colors really do change and they get that checkerboard effect. Then you can bind it off and set it aside. You should have plenty of yarn to do a swatch and then go back and do your Ruana. You will not run out of yarn. Once you are satisfied with the way your gauge swatch looks, everything is measuring the way it's supposed to, that is when I would jump in and tackle your Ruana pattern, and you will be making the entire back of the pattern for this portion of the stitch along. As you jump into the pattern, you will be casting on 163 stitches. You are not going to join. You will be working back and forth. Remember, those circular needles are purely used to hold all the stitches. You're not using them in circular nature. You're using them as straights just to hold the stitches. When you get those 163 stitches cast on, you'll notice you're supposed to knit 4 rows, and then you will do an increase row. All this is doing is adjusting the gauge between the garter stitch and then going into the mosaic stitch. You will be doing some simple knit front and back stitches. Those are not very hard. I'll show you how to do those in just a second so that you do know how to complete those. Once your knit front and backs are complete, you will have a total of 173 stitches on your needle. That's when you will jump in to your mosaic stitch pattern. And it's exactly what we did. You'll have a knit stitch over here, right? That'll start off with your, and then you'll have your slip 1 purlwise with yarn and back, and then it will be a knit 8, and then it'll be a repeat. So you'll have slip 1 or knit 1, slip 1 purlwise with yarn and back, and then knit 8, and then so on and so forth, so on and so forth, all the way to the end of your row. As you are working the back of the pattern, you'll notice that it goes all the way up through row 72, which is at the top of this section here. And then you repeat that 2 more times. So here it is again. Let's put this out here. So there's a repeat right there. And then you can see here's another repeat right here. And then you do rows 1 through 16 one time. All right. So you are going to have 1, 2, 3 of the large sections, 3 sections of 72. And then you're going to get to rows 1 through 16. It's at that point you're going to stop and wait for the next set of instructions, okay? So that is a lot of knitting you have to do. Make sure you're giving yourself time to pause and stretch and relax. Take care of your hands, okay? You want to make sure you're really stretching your hands. Drink lots of water and take breaks. It's a lot of knitting. So give yourself maybe little treats every time you reach the 72 rows. Treat yourself with a trip to Starbucks or something. Anything that helps you get through all of that. All right. So the last thing I want to show you is how to do that knit front and back stitch for those of you who don't know. If you already know how to do it, you can go ahead and carry on, but let's look how to do that knit front and back. I'm just going to bring in this little swatch just so that you guys can see how it would be done, all right? So you would go to the part indicated in the pattern, and to do a knit front and back stitch, let me get over a couple stitches just so you can see. What will happen is you'll get to the stitch you're supposed to do the knit front and back. You go into the stitch just like you're going to knit it, and you knit it, but don't let that stitch fall off your left-hand needle. Swivel your right-hand needle around, go into this back leg of that same stitch, yarn over your needle, and then pull that yarn over through the back leg of that stitch. Now let that stitch jump off, and you've created 2 stitches where there used to be only 1 stitch. Okay, I'll show you how to do that one more time. Let me just move over a couple stitches. Go into the stitch like you're going to knit it, and knit it. Don't let it jump off. Swivel your needle around, go into the back leg of that same stitch and knit into the back leg. Now let that jump off and you have 2 stitches. Besides that, make sure that you join us over in the JOANN Stitch-Along group if you have any questions, or if you want to show us your progress, show us your gauge swatch. Be like, this is really great. The gauge swatch is a necessary evil, you guys. You want to make sure that your gauge is correct, and if you're changing colors, it's a great opportunity for you to play around with those colors to make sure they will work with the stitch pattern. I know you guys can do this. Give yourself some time, some breaks, some relaxation, and some patience. If you have questions, I am here. Make sure you ask in the video comments below, or like I said, in the JOANN Stitch-Along group. I am in there to answer questions as well. A lot of your fellow members of the Stitch-Along community. All right, I'm Marley Bird for Joann.com and Yarnspirations. This is the JOANN Stitch-Along for Spring 2023.